Hey everyone, we are so excited. Today we have the founder of WAVV with us, Mark Leck. And Mark, we're just excited. I get asked about WAVV's origin, how we started all the time, and we just want to share the story. And so really grateful that you're with us today.
Yeah, excited to be here.
So the biggest thing I think is everyone's like a dialer, why even start a dialer? Why get into this? Did you know about it? And I'm like, no, actually, I met this guy, Mark Leck, and he was kind of already had this business model that he wanted to run with. So can we just start at the very beginning? Like the origin of the idea, how did that shape up, and like what caused you guys to want to start building a dialer?
Yeah, so one of my other companies is a lead gen company, and they started off with providing sort of a single type of list of leads to real estate agents, actually. And over the years, we kept adding more and more unique lead lists. And over time, our clients kept having more and more data that they needed to call. And soon we noticed that if they weren't asking us for a dialer, they were out trying to find another dialer to use. And so at some point we said, well, we need to go provide a dialer solution for our clients. So yeah, we went out and started looking for any pre-existing dialer solutions that existed in the market. We looked at big companies like Five9s and some of the other sort of 500-pound gorillas in our industry. And what we wanted was to create a native experience for our customers. We didn't want them to actually leave the lead generation system that we had built for them. We just wanted to augment that system with a dialer experience. And every company that we went to, nobody could do that. Every solution required that our users leave the platform we had spent a lot of time and energy kind of building and refining for prospecting the type of leads we were providing to them. And they all required them to go into another system that was really generalized and was not optimized for prospecting those types of leads. And we were like, well, this sucks because we want to create kind of this optimal experience, but nobody could do it. Actually, one company in our industry we came across had a dialer solution, and at the time we had been, our main lead management app was a .NET application, and they had an entire dialer built in .NET. And they had reached out to us because they wanted an integration where our clients would send data from our system into their dialer. And we were like, hey, we will totally do that. Why don't you share your library files with us? We'll embed your dialer within our ecosystem also. And like, they can choose how they want to work. And I thought this was like answer to prayers.
The perfect
experience. And they were like, no, we don't want to do that. And I was like, well, why not? And they said, well, look, you guys are the bullets and we're the gun. And we think that as soon as your clients put all the data in our system, like we'll get all your clients as our clients. And I was like, okay.
What a weird thing to say, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Let's downgrade how much value you guys bring, but.
Yeah. So I was like, well, why would I do that then? Like, if you don't want to help us, but you really want us to help you. He was like, well, because we have clients that want it, like we should do it for them. And I said, we have like 2 clients that want this and you want it and stuff. And he said, well, what if I pay you? And I said, well, now you're talking. Like, why don't you pay us? And so anyways, we came up with an agreement for him to pay us some money. We went to sign the agreement and he said, hey, should we put in a non-compete? And I said, no, I'm going to compete with you. We want a dialer. Why don't we just work together cooperatively? And he was like, no, we'll just do it this way. And I was like, okay, have it your way. And so anyway, so we never did that. But the whole intent was we were always, I think there's a lot of CRM and lead type companies out there, and they genuinely like spend a lot of time trying to optimize for a certain desired customer experience, right? And when you look at a lot of the dialer systems out there that require you to leave that experience and go over to their generalized one that has been generalized because they want to work with a lot of different CRMs, it's just never as good of an experience. And so we wanted to create a native experience, and that's, you know, what started kind of us going after WAVV.
Yeah, it's the coolest story to me because, I mean, your background, you care so much about the user experience, right? That journey that they're on as they're in the software, especially, you know, with the lead management or CRM. This concept of them leaving versus staying. And now, you know, you go out and you look at all the dialers in the industry and nobody else is doing that. I mean,
Yep.
this was, and we're talking .NET. Hopefully you guys even know what that
Know what
is.
that is.
But
it's old.
It was that long ago. You just had this vision of it living inside, but still being able to function in different places. Just really awesome.
Yeah, and just by way of example, like one of the leads that we were delivering for real estate was property based.
Mm-hmm.
And most lead management systems, most lead gen sources, it's always a contact based lead. So, you know, some individual on the internet fills out a web form and they put in their name and their phone number and everything. That's a contact based lead. It starts with the name of the person and their phone number. In our business, it was a property based lead. And so anytime we went to go push that information into another platform, they didn't know how to kind of be property first and then contact second. And so that was one of the big progressions for us. We're like, well, if we use somebody else's dialer, it's like shoving a square peg into a round hole. There's going to be a loss of fidelity and a loss of a customer experience. And so,
yeah, the data association doesn't map correctly.
Yeah.
Just you're forced into that box and it didn't work.
And the other thing is that a lot of those other platforms, they are like, we're a dialer, and they wanted to be, you know, show everybody how much of a dialer they were, and everything in their user interfaces were like, we're a dialer, we're a dialer, we're a dialer. And from our perspective, like, dialing your leads was like one button.
Yeah.
It was like, I got a list of leads, I want to click call, and I want it to do its thing. And, you know, certainly there's a lot that goes into a dialer, especially when you look at a multi-line power dialer, especially when you look at compliance and everything else. There's a lot to go in there. But from a user experience standpoint, we wanted to be as minimalistic as possible in what we built. Because to the user, once all that stuff is configured, it really should just be a lightweight experience. I'm looking at my data, I'm working it the way I want, and then I make a call. And most CRMs, you know, have that same kind of mindset, but the dialers kind of really want to emphasize all the other stuff that I think is secondary.
Yeah, yeah. It's the experience has just been so awesome to see it like progress through of, you know, this little dial button that's in the CRM and still keeping the user engaged in the CRM while being able to dial and like do everything you need is really awesome. But let's talk about kind of the evolution then of WAVV. Going from being inside of your other business to now integrating with these other platforms. Take us on that journey. When did that happen? How did that come about?
Yeah, so I mean, we started working on the dialer for our other business, you know, pre-2015. But the mindset at that time was, if we can build the dialer in a modular way that was easily embeddable into the existing lead management platform that we had, we felt like we would win. And sure enough, we won. Like we generated millions in sales from it. It was super effective, got great reception from our customer base. So that was kind of viewed as phase one. Phase two was, okay, now that that's working in our lead management system, we want to go take that concept and apply it to all the other CRMs and really give them the chance to have their users have the same native experience that we created within our system. So that was phase two. That started around 2019, and that's been a big journey. One funny thing I'll tell you, So we were not always called WAVV, right?
Yeah,
So,
I actually almost wore my other shirt just to show it.
So the original brand for the dialer was Storm. And again, going back to that one conversation I had with this guy, he was like, "Oh, you guys are the bullets, we the dialer, we're the gun." So I like shooting, and when we were getting ready to go build the dialer, my brother had let me borrow one of his handguns. It was a Beretta Storm 9mm handgun. And anyways, I was like holding this gun and I'm like, Storm, Storm. I like that name. And so we ended up naming the dialer Storm. It turns out like several years later in 2019 when we were going through phase 2 of the project with the dialer, we did some intellectual property research and found out there's a company out of Europe that owns all the rights for Storm dialers, Storm Messenger, Storm everything. And our IP attorneys were like, yeah, you should change the name.
You need to get rid of that one.
Yeah. Hence WAVV, which is super cool. I actually love the brand.
Yeah, I do miss the Storm brand and feel, but WAVV is awesome.
We had a really cool logo with a cloud and a lightning bolt coming out of it, like Power Dialer, Storm. It was awesome.
That was so cool. Well, let's talk about, now WAVV, you can use it in so many different platforms. The evolution of WAVV and just the industry of calling and how much has changed. If someone were to come in and want to learn about a dialer and like why they should use one, like what's your pitch to them? What would you coach them on?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think that the first thing I would say is, in smaller organizations, this is where that question kind of comes up more than anything.
Yeah.
If you're a small company, if you have a small inside sales team, a lot of them are the ones that are kind of scratching their head wondering if a dialer is the right thing for them. And really, it's probably a matter of size and the amount of lead volume and stuff like that. But you look at any mid-sized company or large company, like every single company leverages a dialer.
Yeah.
Everyone, without question. And it's all about call efficiency. Those large companies, they have large marketing teams, they're generating a large inflow of leads, and their whole goal is speed to lead, right? They want to be able to get in contact with those leads as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible. And that's what a power dialer is meant to do. And, we live in an interesting time right now where there's so much changing in terms of compliance, for really good reasons, by the way. With compliance, with I think personal privacy. We all have the unwanted phone calls coming in on our phones and everything else. And the whole AI movement that we see going on right now promises a lot more disruption as it comes to all this stuff. But it still does not replace the need for people to have conversations with other people. And sales fundamentally is what drives all businesses. And what drives sales is one-on-one conversations with people. So I think, for anybody that's even thinking about a dialer, the question is your business at a level, or do you want your business to get to a level where, the dialer really makes sense? And for me, that's a pretty small organization. Our first business, we built the dialer for solopreneurs, like single agents, real estate agents who are operating on their own, and they just got enough lead flow that they were like, we need to be more efficient with our time.
Yeah, and you brought that up. It was amazing. I remember first coming on and like looking at the data. I didn't know much about dialer technology in the space at all, but I think one of the things that stood out to me was like the average real estate agent at that time was making like 40-something thousand in commissions. And then you guys had done this research of agents that are using a dialer in this technology, and it was like $150,000, $200,000, like just insanely more than the average agent. And it's because of that technology and that efficiency. And now as we've moved into larger teams and organizations, that ability for a solopreneur to ramp up and like really expand their sales team through these tooling is awesome. It's so cool to see. So I guess kind of going from there, if we were to take the dialer and just, for some reason it becomes a thing of the past, AI replaces it or whatever, what do you feel like would be missing, in your sales process? If you rip that dialer technology out, how does that impact, your business?
Yeah, so when you bring up AI, I go, the first thought I had was human connection,
Yeah.
right? Like, how sad is it going to be when we never talk to other people again, right? Or if we end up not being that. I don't know that that's ever going to happen. I think it might happen with like scheduling an appointment with your dental office or things like that. But yeah, I think, look, I think the thing that you lose when you take dialers out of the equation is efficiencies. And so part of the American business model, in my mind, is all about fostering a highly competitive environment where companies compete for the best customer and push things forward. And in my mind, you remove dialers. The reason dialers came into existence was companies who wanted a competitive edge. It was companies who wanted to be able to outpace, from a sales perspective, other companies in their industry or market or something like that. And so to me, you take those away and you lose sort of a competitive advantage that was created by the technology. And ultimately, you reduce the number of real human interactions that you have.
Yeah. We were just talking about this of like the levels of conversation and how much persuasion you have in those type, the most persuasion you have is one-on-one, person to person, right? In real time, being able to have those conversations. And then I think secondary to that is video calls. Like that just really changed the industry, to be able to jump on a Zoom call and feel almost like you're in person. But then third, in my mind, is a phone call, right? Everything else is a delayed or asymmetrical conversation, right? So having a phone call is still so powerful, and that human connection that you have there's a lot of persuasion that can happen there and really enhance those relationships or progress the relationship in a way that's possible.
Yeah, 100%. Well, even at our other company, like the whole focus was how do we take an individual real estate agent, kind of this solopreneur type person, and how do we teach them to act like a larger business? And all we did was show them all the things we normally did ourselves as a company. So, we generated our own leads. We wanted them to generate leads, right? We had an inside sales team. They needed to have dedicated time that they were focused on making outbound calls and selling more effectively. We purchased a third-party dialer to use for our inside sales team. We think that they should have a dialer to be more efficient in making their outbound calls. And so to me, it was what was nice was the congruency between like everything that we were already doing as a larger corporation in a environment. We were teaching these solopreneurs to do the exact same thing and to follow the same behaviors that we have. And if you look at most of the influencers out there that are talking about how to grow your business, they're saying, hey, let us show you this blueprint for how these larger businesses work, and you should follow those, and you should copy those things. So it's like, if you look at what the big boys are doing and copy those, generally, that's a really good strategy.
Yeah, those business principles are true, right?
Yeah.
Like as you follow them, you're going to see results.
Speed to lead, have as many conversations as possible. If the dialer runs dry, then all of a sudden you got to focus on marketing and your lead gen and everything else for that, right? But if you're doing a good job on lead gen and you've got a good inflow, then it's all speed to lead and how fast you can call.
Yeah. Well, take us into the future then. What gets you excited about WAVV, the direction, what the market's doing? What do you see coming in the next year or so?
Yeah, so, we have loved some of the new CRM integrations that we've done, whether it's with High Level or RedX or some of the other industry players out there. I see larger CRM integrations coming down the road. I think that call boards is going to be just game changer. And specifically, what we've noticed is more and more of this transition from like a one-man team to like a 3, 4, or 5-man team. And one of the issues that happens when you start calling with 5 or 6 people doing outbound calls is just the organization of those leads. It becomes a challenge for the sales team leader in that organization. And call boards, in my mind, is all about helping that sales team leader get their entire team organized, get their entire team super efficient, giving them the stats and control to be able to help see what's going on their team, how efficient they are, how productive they are. And again, it's bringing kind of enterprise-grade technology to these smaller teams and making them far more powerful than they have been historically.
Yeah, I love it. Call boards is so awesome. I think what surprised me the most is you have kind of two camps: those who are very familiar with dialer technology and they've used, a bunch of different ones, and those who are more of the solopreneur and just kind of getting started and trying to ramp up and grow their business. Callboard solves problems for both sides, and it's been so cool. Like the big boys using it, they come in, they see it, like, oh my gosh, this solves so many of the problems and pains we've had in the past that we didn't know we could solve this way. And then the ones who've never used it, they come in, they're like, oh, thank you, this just makes sense. I'm so happy like we can use it this way. And it's just cool that people fall in both camps and it works for them. So.
100%. Yeah, so then in terms of other stuff, I mean, AI is, WAVV is, I would say, being very methodical about AI. Yeah. I think there's a lot of kind of hype around AI right now. I mean, no doubt. I mean, we're all using ChatGPT and Gemini and a million other AI tools right now. I think there's been a lot of overhype as it relates to like voice-related calls at the moment, meaning there's a lot of solutions that are promising kind of the moon and the stars and the sun. And then when you listen to them or you experience them, you're like, yeah, not quite, not yet. Yeah. Do I think it's going to get there? 100%. I think that you're also seeing regulation come up that's banning certain types of outbound calls and things like that using artificial voices. And I think that some of the new AI is going to be harder and harder to detect, but technically there's cases where if you're employing that and you don't have the right permissions, that's a compliance issue.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I would kind of dissuade organizations. I think it's a distraction right now to go after AI voice and stuff like that, unless you're dealing with like IVR systems that have always historically been some type of artificial voice type thing. But for sales, I think that it's not there yet. And that's not to say it's not going to change quickly, but in my mind, the best thing you can do is still focus on human-to-human connection. And I think actually there's going to be this big trend even when AI voice does come. And I think you're going to see pockets of the industry who say, we went the exact opposite direction. We focused on real, genuine human interaction. We actually focused on even things like in-person meetings and stuff like that more, and that will drive better and better sales.
Yeah, I totally agree. It kind of reminds me when COVID hit and you went through this period where you couldn't have in-person meetings. The whole events industry just died. Yep. It was gone. And then you had this surge of people who are like, I just need to get in a space where I can actually be with other people, right? And I think that's going to be very similar with AI. It'll get to the point where it's like, I just want to talk to someone real and like actually have that conversation.
And I'm sure this is a tangent, but like there's some amazing books. There's this book, Tribe by Sebastian Junger, and he talks about how humans are tribal, whether we know it or not. We've always been in tribes. And he goes, the best example is when you travel abroad and you run across someone else and you're like, oh, you're American? It's like, yeah, I'm American. Oh, where are you from? And you go from country to state to region, and the closer you can get to that person in the tribe, the more connected you feel with them. And I just think, I think when it comes to all human interaction, like post-COVID, people were like, oh, I love being remote. Oh my gosh, there's so much mental illness going on right now. And then people were like, no, I don't want to come back to work right now. And none of that made sense. It's like as soon as people started coming back and reconnecting and going in person, I think work environments got healthier overall.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Anyways, funny tangent.
Well, Mark, thanks so much for sharing the story. We're so excited for WAVV and the direction that it's going, and appreciate all that you've done. I'm so grateful that you had that vision of where WAVV could be, and we're strong enough to just say, okay, we're going to start this and we're going to battle through all the things that we need to make it get here.
Yeah, well, like I probably didn't express this, but the challenge was it didn't exist. And so the only choice was either to not have it or to build it. And so I think candidly, we didn't want to build it in the beginning. There's a lot we didn't know and understand there, and but we wanted the solution, and so that's what put us down that path.
Yeah.